author of the brand new book called The Abomination. You will remember he was also the co-author of the bestseller Unfit for Command. This Abomination book has gotten a lot of attention, and we've got Jerry on the line here. Good morning, Jerry.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm fine, my friend. Thank you very much for your time early this morning. I was reading with sort of a smile on my face the recent report on your book in the New York Times, and they were trying to beat you up in your fact-finding and what's contained in Abomination, and then at the end they couldn't deny the fact that it opened up on the New York Times bestseller list at #1.
I think it's kind of a badge of distinction these days to get beat up by the New York Times.
You're absolutely right. You know, we've got to get into this because we don't have a lot of time, and there's so much material here. You do not deny that you wrote this book for one reason, and that's that you don't want Barack Obama to be president of the United States.
Oh, that's correct. I mean, I'm a staff reporter with WorldNet Daily. At WorldNet Daily, we also write editorials. We make our views known, unlike the New York Times, which says they're objective journalism and then writes socialism. I didn't say that. It seems like the New York Times can't get it straight that political reporters have views. And I'm going to be out front with mine. My views are I want to defeat Barack Obama. That's why I wrote the book. I've got 360 pages here, thoroughly researched, put the material forward with 800, close to 700, 680 footnotes, which are primary sources. Many of the original books cited research in Indonesia, when Obama was in Indonesia, and Kenya with his father, with Obama's current involvement in Kenyan politics. The book is thoroughly researched, and I think even the New York Times has to, when they say I've got factual errors, they're down to nitpicking little tiny details that I still will continue to defend.
You know, Jerry, I'm not personally concerned so much about the Kenyan connection here. I understand it is just sort of part of the texture of Barack Obama. What I am concerned about is his view, and though he is trying to deny it at the moment, but he has a socialist background, and there is no question that he, in my view anyway, and yours I know, that this is a guy that if he becomes president of the United States is going to change our landscape like we can't even imagine.
That's right. It's going to go for major redistribution of wealth. The taxing, it's going to be just about, if you made any money, send it in. The problem is, you got Barack Obama's background in history, which continues to shape his ideas today, working, for instance, with Saul Alinsky in Chicago, who's Obama headed a Saul Alinsky organization and taught Saul Alinsky methods. Saul Alinsky, for those who, just the basics of Saul Alinsky, for refreshing everybody's memory on it, is that he was a radical leftist social, organizer. He started in labor unions in the 30s with the meatpackers in Chicago. Then he progressed to try to organize minority communities. His book, Rules for Radical, describes the technique as virtually a Marxist technique. You rub raw the discontent in a community to produce class tension. Then you learn the language of the community. That's why you listen, just to manipulate the community to express its grievances in its own language. You get power, and then you go to redistribute the wealth to the poor. Saul Alinsky said, he wrote his book, Machiavelli wrote The Prince, Saul Alinsky says, for those who have power to keep it. He says, I'm writing Rules for Radical for the have-nots to take the power away.
Jerry, this guy says at every opportunity, and this is my argument, and it has been for months, how can anyone, I can't understand how you can vote for Barack Obama and anyone that says to you, looking at you straight in the face, I am going to raise taxes. Now, he always adds the modifier on the wealthy, but we all know, anybody that has studied revenue generation through taxes knows that there isn't enough of the wealthy money to make the game work.
Well, and John, I spent a good part of the book discussing this idea that he wants to raise capital gains taxes, wants to almost double them. We found through many presidents, including Bill Clinton, the best idea is to lower capital gains because it stimulates investment and it generates more tax revenue.
Especially considering our economy the way it is today.
Exactly. We start raising capital gains right now, we'll send the economy into a tailspin. And then Barack Obama also has before the Senate right now this global poverty tax. 0.7% of our gross domestic product taxed so it can go to the United Nations for world poverty.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, that's never going to get to the world poverty. It's not going to get past the bureaucrats and the dictators at the UN who'll be happy to steal that money.
Hey.
And money doesn't solve poverty. I mean, if we've been spending now since the Great Society in the 60s, spending trillions to solve poverty in the United States. What solves poverty is a combination of families, education, and jobs.
Absolutely. He also wants to tax the companies like ExxonMobil in a quote-unquote windfall profits and send, again, everything he says, I want to send you money. He wants to send $1,000 to everybody to help put gas in the car.
Well, that's right. When I was on Fox and Friends, I was sitting next to Judge Napolitano and said, you know, Judge, do you think Barack Obama might think that Fox News and News Corp is making too much money and it ought to be confiscated and given the next $1,000 check to the poor? I said, how do you think Mr. Murdoch will feel about sharing his profits with the poor?
Or, more importantly, somebody, and this has been discussed, I've seen articles in the news over the past couple of years, a committee that would decide how much money you could make.
Right, and Judge Napolitano properly said there's nothing in our corporate law that identifies confiscating corporate profits to distribute to the poor. It's a socialist idea. The profits of a corporation belong to the shareholders. And that's how we built our economy to be the strongest in the world to where it is today. We start reversing this with Saul Alinsky's socialist principles like Obama wants. I explain in the Abomination that's why we end up a weaker nation economically.
And not only that, he again wants to have national health care, which, again, my focal point on all of these gigantic government-centric programs is that they are incapable of managing anything of that size, which they prove on a daily basis.
Well, even Hillary Clinton said Barack Obama's universal health care plan wouldn't work because he's not making it mandatory. She said it would be like making Social Security not mandatory. If Social Security is not mandatory, John, I think I'll opt out. You know, and the problem is, if you've got a structure here where Barack Obama wants more government all the time, and the government now is going to be able to confiscate our income, confiscate our profits, increase taxes, that's why I say this is an abomination. If we get Barack Obama to apply these socialist ideas, Saul Alinsky advised radicals to put on business suits and run for office. And I think, you know, Barack Obama, who taught Saul Alinsky methods in Chicago, learned the lesson. He put on a suit and ran for office, starting in Chicago. You know, 4 years ago, Barack Obama was an obscure state senator in Illinois. That's why I wrote this whole book, you know, Abomination, in order to get the details and the facts before the public of Obama.
He's
is
still
far left his politics.
He's still obscure, even though we've seen nothing but him on the television. We really don't know anything about it. Yeah, I was reading a story the other day that some in the Democratic Party are kind of expressing buyer's remorse here because here we are, middle of August. We are just days away from the National Convention. We are literally on the short side before the election, and some of the Democratic Party are saying, whoa, how come, considering the world is against George Bush and Republicans, why isn't this guy running away with it?
Well, and I'm also, you know, John, getting contacted by a lot of people who support Hillary Clinton. It's a whole new market for this book. People are finding out things in the Abomination that they never knew. That's why I call the second part of the book the cult of personality, because this whole Messiah Obama figure has been created so that we can't talk about Obama. You know, if you dare to criticize Obama or raise an issue of his past, you're like me, going to get called a racist. And I know in my heart I'm not a racist. I wrote a book with Ken Blackwell, the African-American candidate running for governor in Ohio in 2006. I've done a lot for racial relations in my life.
Jerry, we're going to have to leave it there because of time, but Abomination, a lot of people are reading it, and I hope that they will then be armed with more information, and when it comes time to pull the lever, they'll do it in the right way with their conscience clear.
Well, John, it's the whole point of the book, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be with you.
All right, Jerry, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Jerry Corsi there, The Abomination, Leftist Politics, and the Cult of Personality. Your thoughts, your reaction?